This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We continue in the Sefer Devorah. Yesterday the Devorah told us that there are other Middahs that a person should accustom themselves with. And they are the Middahs of Gevurais Tachtoinos. However, there are days and times that Gevurah should not be employed. And on those days and times, one should only operate with the Middah of Kesser. Especially at times when a person needs Rachamim, so then certainly one needs to be operating only with the Middos of Kesser. So for example, on Shabbos, only the Middos of Kesser are operating. Or Yom Tif, or Yom Kippur, or the time of Tefillah, or when one is engaged in Torah. These are not hours and moments of Gevurah, these are rather moments of Gilui Ratzain Ha'elyon, and therefore one needs to accord themselves in the manner of Kesser solely. So what we're going to go continue now on page Lamed Ches, where the Devorah tells us, Lefikach tzarich kol adam lahargel atzmai be'elo hamidos ma'at ma'at. It is critical that a person accustom themselves to these midos little by little. For example, let's say somebody wants to work on their thoughts, on thinking thoughts of Torah. If they're going to say, okay, today I'm not going to allow my mind to divert for one moment, in all likelihood, you may be successful for about a minute and a half, and then you'll throw in the towel, and you'll give up. Because as the Gra tells us, cited by Rav Goldberg, the Gra in Mishlei, Perak Yotes, Pasuk Gimel, explains the concept of Bala Tahir Messiah. Sometimes a person embarks on a good deed or a mitzvah, and then stops, and it's very difficult, and that's because he's not being assisted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he gets angry, Rebbe Shem, why are you not helping me? But the truth is, it's because of his own foolishness, because the person is biting off more than he could chew. So a person has to operate, and one has to pursue midos toivos ma'at. The main midah to grab a hold of, shehu mafteach hakol, which is the key for everything, ha'anava. B'mnei roish l'kulan, it is the highest of all the midos of Kesser. Bechina rishayna b'Kesser, the first level of Kesser. V'sachteha yuchlal hakol, and beneath it everything is included. So anava includes everything. That's the key to everything. Reb Chaim Volozhiner writes in the Ruach Chaim that the following lashon, he says, "Ki al yidei ha'anava zoicha ha'adam ha'koil." Through humility, a person is zoicha to everything. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest of all the prophets and the greatest of all the chachamim, he was praised only with humility, and whatever he was zoicha was because of his humility. And then Reb Chaim Volozhiner writes an amazing thing. He says, if there would be today someone who is an anav like Moshe, he would be a navi and a chacham like Moshe. He would be zoicha to Torah like Moshe Rabbeinu. So the key to all midos tovos is anava. As the Ramban writes, midas ha'anava shehi midah tova mikol hamidos ha'tovos. Now what is anava? How do we define anava? Says the Devorah, "V'hinei ikar ha'anavahu." The main principle of humility is shelo yimtza ba'atzmai erech klal, that a person should not find himself worthy at all. Ela yachshav shehu ha'ayin. He should consider himself as if he's nothing. Uchamaimer ha'onav, like the greatest humble man said about himself, namely Moshe and Aaron said, V'nachnu ma, what are we? Ki salinu aleinu. Not one should have a low opinion of themselves, but not have any opinion of themselves. One should consider themselves as if they're nothing. Ad sheyiyahu be'einav, to the extent that one is in their own eyes, hashvela shebechol hanivram, the lowest of all creatures. Says Rav Goldberg, the Ramban, in the pasuk in Parsha Shemais, when Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to defer Hashem's mission, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, you know what, shlach na biyat tishlach, don't send me. So we tend to read this pasuk, send the one that you usually send. Rashi learns, who did the Rebbe Shem usually send? Aaron. Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says it refers to Pinchas. The Ramban says, Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, send anybody. I'm sure whoever you find, they will be more worthy than I am. That's what the Talmud Devorah is saying. You should be in your own eyes the lowest of all creatures. Everyone is more worthy than you. As the Ramban writes in the Garas Ramban, if you see someone who's smarter than you, you should say probably they know more Torah than you. If you see someone who's not as smart as you, you should say whatever their shortcomings is, they probably do unintentionally because they don't know any better. If you see somebody who's wealthier than you, you should say they give more tzedakah. If you see someone who's poorer than you, you should say they're more humble than you. But you should be the most unworthy human being on the face of the earth in one's own eyes. Now, the lashon of the Talmud Devorah is that one should be the lowest of all creations, not only man, but even animal. And the Rav Goldberg explains that even though man is the handiwork of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but one should feel that because they have capacity to accomplish more and they fall short of that, they are in fact the lowest of all creations. One should consider themselves disgraceful and lowly. Rav Goldberg cites the Rambam. The Rambam in the Parsha Mishnayos writes that he once asked one of the pious individuals, what was the happiest day of your life? And this righteous individual said, I was once going on a boat and I was in a very lowly cabin, and some of the other passengers, they treated me like dirt, and they looked down on me to the point that they uncovered themselves. And the Rambam says this chassid said, they urinated on this chassid, and the chassid said, I swear, I was not upset, I did not get angry, I was so happy I reached the madrega that nothing bothers me. This is the tachlis of the Middah of Shiflus. Says the Talmud Devorah, when a person tries to constantly attain this midah, apparently we see that this is something that requires constant work. All the other midos are drawn after it. Because the Middah of Kesser, Hamidah Harishayna Asher Bai. The first Middah of Kesser, the primary Middah of Kesser, Shenira Atzmai La'ayin Lefnei Ma'atzilai, is to show oneself as nothing before that which has hewn you out. Meaning the Middah of Kesser, which is closest to Ribban Sham, is, so to speak, to be embarrassed and consider, the Middah of Kesser considers itself unworthy before the Ribbon Shalom. So emulating the Middah of Kesser is Kach Yasim Ha'adam Atzmai Ayin Mamish. A person should make themselves as if they're Mamish nothing. V'yachshoiv Ha'edaroi Toiv Ma'oid Min HaMetzios. And consider had they not been created, considering their absence, that would be more valuable than their existence. Like we say on Yom Kippur. We say, Afar ani b'chayai, I am dust in my life, kavachomer b'misasi. So their person is acknowledging that even in their lifetime they're unworthy. Here the Middah of Anava dictates to the extent where one considers that his absence would be of more value than his existence. And now the Talmud Devorah reveals the true epitome of humility. Not only to be able to tolerate insult and not to insult back, but as if to act as if the other person is the correct one, and fault lies with the person themselves. In this way one could be present to those who disgrace him, as if they are correct, and he is the despicable one, that upon him is guilt. And this will be the impetus and the motivation and the beginning of the process of acquiring midos tovos, and that is because humility is the first midah tova and the source of all midos tovos, and from there will come all midais tovos. So a question we have to address is, this seems somewhat of a dangerous ideal, because if a person considers themselves so lowly and unworthy, Rabbeinu Yoina actually writes that the first step in Avodas Hashem is to recognize Eirech Atzmai, to recognize your value. Because if you don't value yourself, then I'm nothing. So what if I come to shul by Haidu or by Yehi Chavayid? What's the big deal? So, to daven properly, you have to be in shul like 10 minutes early, otherwise you don't even have a fighting shot of starting Shemana Esrei with the tzibur. A lot of people, they go to shul. Somebody could go to shul their whole life and never daven with a minyan. Because if you don't, according to the Mishnah Berurah at least, if you don't start Shemana Esrei with the tzibur, you're not davening with a minyan. The fact that you said, Ma toivu Adonai Olam, Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem, Akeda, Pitam Aktoires, from a klaf that you got in Sfas, from a Makubal who is a 10th generation Yushalmi, is not going to make it that you davened with a minyan. Davening with a minyan means you start Shemana Esrei with a minyan. So, what's the nafkamina? I came a minute late, 2 minutes late. Who am I? What am I worth? Does it really matter? Does Hashem value my avodah? So Rabbeinu Yoina writes, the first step of avodas Hashem is recognizing your own value. And here the Talmud Devorah is saying, what is humility? Shelo yimtza ba'atzmai eirech klal. Not to value yourself at all. So isn't that a stira? Here, humility is not to value yourself at all. And Rabbeinu Yoina writes, the first step in Avodas Hashem is recognizing your erech. Rabbi Isai will think about that. In the meantime, what's tomorrow? Shavas B'Tammuz? I guess you have to learn Musar on a fast day, no? That's probably the right thing to do. But I guess we'll try. Bli neder. We'll try. In the meantime, have a good rest of the day. Get in your hydration. Interesting shaila. Okay, this is not Torah Devorah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.